This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gould.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. Guys, thank you for being here. Thank you for all the rating and reviewing that is happening out there. I truly, truly appreciate it. Thank you for the all the binge listening and the messages. Thank you for the emails I've been getting recently. Just got one actually just a couple days ago from a recent Academy graduate. Sent me a picture and everything. I did not get permission, but I would like to show it on the show because it's a great picture. She listens to the show and has listened to it through Academy, and then she sent me this really cool picture of like it must be 50 or 60 new officers with the white Texas police hats on and with a helicopter behind them, and just awesome. It's so cool. I love seeing that. She really appreciates your show, and I really appreciate her sending that to me. It really, really keeps me going, and I mean that. It is so cool to think that, from your basement, you can essentially now in this modern age, you can start essentially a radio show for not a lot of money, and then impact people's lives like that, and then they thank you for it. I mean, it's pretty sweet. It's really cool. So I will reach out to her and see if I can share that picture and say her name and all that. But yeah, very cool. So keep those coming. I really, really like it, and it does definitely it definitely motivates me. And guys, also I would be remiss if I didn't tell you the show needs guests. We need people to come on and tell their war stories so the audience can gain a better appreciation for what the men and women of law enforcement actually do. So if you go to thingspolicec.com, you can scroll down and click Be a Guest. If you're a cop yourself, or you know somebody who's in law enforcement, or you have an uncle or a grandfather, or anybody who you think might be good that might want to come on and crack wise and tell their stories from the job, I would really appreciate that. And some of the best ones I get are from just random people that are like, hey, my uncle, he was a sheriff in a small town in Iowa for like 35 years, and he has these crazy stories. Bring it on. That's what I want. Please send them to thingspolicec.com or steve@thingspolicec.com, and we can set it up. So, guys, I can't thank you enough. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you for the Patreon supporters. If you really love the show and you want to show that your love monetarily to old Stevie Boy, to old Gingerface, you can do that through the link in the show notes. So, without further ado, guys, I have a first-time. It's a first-time guest on Things Police See, where I've never had just a straight up career dispatcher. She was recommended to me by Iceman from Motor Cop Chronicles. She has incredible career, has handled some amazing calls. I work with dispatch and have worked with dispatch for years, obviously, as a police officer, and their job is incredibly stressful, and they pull off some miracles up there with what they're doing, a lot of time with limited resources, and they do also incur a lot of the same trauma that we do from dealing with the same clientele that we deal with in these insane and seemingly impossible situations. So she did 27 years El Dorado County Sheriffs in California. She was, before that, a military police officer for the National Guard. Also has sounds like she has a pretty great story from her years doing that. And now she currently, because of some of the intensity of the calls that she dealt with, she is spreading the word about PTSD in the dispatch world for police and fire. Without further ado, let me bring on the great Debbie Green. Debbie!
The great. Thank you.
You like that?
I like that. That was great.
Good. Is Debbie okay, or are you more formal with
Debbie's
Deborah?
fine, yeah.
Doesn't have to be
A
Deborah.
lot of people, KU just works fine too,
Got it. So, Debbie, you start off in the National Guard, being a police lady, which is very cool. And how many years did you do there?
So I started, joined in 1986. Then as a communications officer or communications specialist. then because I wanted to be a military police officer right off the bat, but I was too short according to their standards at the
Oh,
time.
really?
So I had to do a loophole. So once you get in, you can do, you go to basic training, go to your school, and then once you're done with that, then you can reapply to be military police once you're in. But
Interesting. Height standards. That's fun. I mean, it's so funny to look
height
at that
standards,
now.
yeah.
I mean, the Mass State Police, the word on the street is back in the day, you had to be 6 feet, male, and preferably a Marine. That's what they wanted. And obviously, those standards were found to be unfair, so they're out the window now. But that was what it took. So it sounds like the Army wasn't that dissimilar.
No, not at all. But I really enjoyed what I did. And it was at the time. So after I had been in about 6 years and I got my certification for the MOS, was about the time that Desert Shield and Desert Storm was.
Yep.
So, um, so let me think here. So my ex-husband, my number 2 husband, went to Desert Storm, and when he came back, I was supposed to go, but then instead we went to the LA riots because that happened at that time.
Geez, that's kind of like which one is safer. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I would have rather gone to Saudi Arabia. Thank you very much.
Wow, that is I know that they had National Guard there, obviously, but it's got to be. It adds to the stress level when all of a sudden you're operating in a municipality, in a city, backing up their cops, playing by their rules. It must be like so stressful to be like just figuring out what you can and can't do now. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and then, your training is against a foreign enemy. So when you get sent to a civil disturbance, you're not going against a foreign enemy. You're going against your own people.
Yeah.
So
you don't lie down suppressive fire.
Right. So that was very different. And even going into the LA area, my God, holy moly, who knew?
Yeah,
That was just a crazy time.
It must have been crazy. Before we came on here, you did let a little snippet out about having to deal with one of your supervisors during the riot.
One of our sergeants was not. So we had direct orders not to talk to the press, and because of things that were going on there, we weren't allowed to have live ammunition in our weapons. The M16s, we couldn't have live ammunition, and he went to the media defying a direct order and told them all about it, and so we had to arrest him.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Did he know when you guys walked up on him? Did he know the gig was up?
Oh yeah. There was a couple other things that he had done during our stint down there, and yeah, he wasn't a good guy. So
that's crazy.
yeah.
How does that? It's hard to believe that someone who's gone through the same training that you'd gone through the military, the boot camp, the whole thing, all of a sudden in a situation like this decides, I'm just going to start going off the cuff here. I'm going to start doing my own thing. It's like, what?
Well, and and it's putting other people in danger too, not just telling the media what's going on. That's all well and good, but you're putting our lives in danger by doing that.
Yeah.
So
what is the deal with that? Did you have, like, it couldn't be loaded, or you couldn't have any live ammo in any of your guns?
We couldn't have any. Well, luckily, according to the UCMJ, military police officers can have or will have live ammunition in their sidearms. Okay. So our 45s were loaded, but our M16s weren't.
And that was probably because they felt like they were dancing the line of like weapons of
Yeah,
war and like occupying the U.S. and whatever the federal laws are.
exactly. It was just weird. I don't know. When you're driving around trying to provide cover for fire departments, going to fires and going with police officers also on their calls, and there was a lot of shooting going on. They were shooting at firefighters. They were shooting at cops. They were shooting at everybody, and if we didn't have something to protect ourselves, that it just was kind of stupid. But, you know, I'm armchair quarterbacking 40 years later. So
No, I hear you. That is crazy. That is not. So did you have to carry the M16 with you?
yes.
Oh
So we're
my.
carrying it, and you could tell that it didn't have a magazine in it. And you have these gang members driving by going, yeah, we know you're not loaded. So,
Why would that guy do that? That's nuts.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, you made it. You made it out.
I made it out alive, thank God.
So you do your time in the National Guard, and did you immediately know that communications, like dispatching, like what made you pick that over police?
So when you're in the National Guard, it's not full time. So doing my civilian stuff, I was applying to sheriff's departments, police departments in the area as an officer. And somebody just said, "Hey, they have dispatchers. You might do well doing that." So I said, "Okay," and I applied with Sacramento Police Department and got hired as a dispatcher. And at the time, I was going through their dispatch academy when I was taken to LA for the riots.
Oh,
So, and then my enlistment was up about a month after LA. So, I just let that go and stayed with law enforcement.
gotcha. Yeah. So I love it when someone has it's just easy as that. You're like, oh, dispatch has an opening. All right, I'll try that.
Okay.
It is a tough. I mean, I've said this before in the podcast, but the last agency I worked at, I got certified in 911 and the whole thing so that we could give, I had enough seniority as an officer where sometimes I would be OIC in lieu of a sergeant. And then I would, if dispatch needed a break, I would give it to them, but they were always very cordial. That'd be like, if I hear 911, I will run up. They were very cool about it because they, when you don't operate the PSAPs and all that stuff, like when it's not your thing, or if the fire department goes off, full panic mode. It's like, I'm mutual aid, all this stuff. I am lost. It is, it's a maddening job. I think it's maddening because I've stood there and watched like all the stuff going off and then having to keep straight what people say, and they're calling in times, and that's if nothing's going, that's just procedural. And then you add in like someone in trouble or like an emergency in the mix, it gets off the hinges very quickly.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it does. And I worked in a big agency and then went to a smaller agency. So the difference was kind of interesting also.
I bet.
So our busiest day in El Dorado County was the slowest day with Sacramento. So that kind of tells you something.
Yeah. I think there must be, it's like being a cop. There's a sweet spot. Like, I think, I don't know how long anybody could last, and I see it in the cities with city cops too, where if you're just constantly like you're just hopping call to call to call to call to call to call in dangerous, threatening situation one after the other. Some people are fine with it, and however their chemistry is made, they're fine, and then other people, and a lot of people do like 3 to 5 years, and then they're out. They're like, I don't want to be a cop anymore. I don't.
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't want to do it. Same with dispatch, where it's like, if you can't have those moments where like you can have a meal or maybe, I don't know,
hot cup of coffee.
yeah, or watch TV for a second, or like just do anything to unwind. If you're just constantly just like boom, 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 I don't understand how anybody, if you don't become a supervisor or something else, I don't know how you stay in that role and like it.
Oh, yeah. Sacramento was just, I think my record was entering over 100 calls in an 8-hour shift. Now, that
Oh,
doesn't count all the phone calls I answered. That was 100 calls that I entered. So if you can imagine, and then you're sending that out to be handled by the officer. So, I mean, and that was in 1992.
yeah.
That's not now.
Yeah. I met my buddy
So,
Ken. My buddy Ken did a stint. He was LAPD police officer. I worked with him at Backgrounds over there, but he did a stint in dispatch during his career, and it's when they had like the old conveyor belt of like calls would like
yeah.
come in, and you like pick up like paper and look at it. I'm like, wow, that must have been bedlam. Like just paper tickets, like
Oh
like
my God. I could imagine.
in.
Yeah, the CHP would tell me stories that, they'd be bored and they'd stick a paper clip with a match on one of those cards, light the match, and then send it down the conveyor belt to the radio guy.
Wow, must be nice, huh?
Oh man.
That's funny. Debbie, so I'm gonna ask you just the stock questions because I know you're gonna have stories for them. So early on in dispatching, you're out of training, or maybe you're still in training, but you're new. Can you tell us about the first call that you got that like you felt that little bit of panic? You were like, "Whoa, this is the real deal."
So my first 911 call, I answered it, and it was a mom that had found her daughter committed suicide, found her body in the bathroom.
Oh man.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're talking fresh off of training, fresh off of just answering, yeah, that was a big one.
So
Um,
you get a call like that, and you have to obviously stay on the phone with her. And what are what guidelines do they give you for? Because obviously, like as a fellow human being, you probably want to like gush on this person, or you want to hug them, or be like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry," or whatever. Do they make you hold a line of separation at all, or can you kind of at that point
yeah,
just
you need to have that little bit of separation, because there's things that we have to do when you get that kind of call. So when you're receiving that call on 911, and it's with Sacramento at the time, I don't know if their policies changed, but we had to transfer it to the fire dispatcher, because they had to take over to check, to give possible instructions in case that person was still alive. And we would stay on the line and listen to them. So, but you still have to have, I don't know how to explain it. You got to kind of build up a little wall
yeah,
so that your emotions aren't coming through, because you can't have a dispatcher crying
yeah, right,
with mom, I mean, as much as we wanted to, but you can't be crying along with that caller, so you've got to keep that little bit of distance, but still show some empathy with them, for them.
yeah.
It's
Would Now after a call like that, especially when you're new, would there ever be a time when a supervisor or like a coworker would like kind of be like, "Hey, why don't you take a fiver?" Or you know what I mean? Like, is that recognized at all, or is it just kind of like take the next one?
so this is 1992, where it was more, you got to suck it up. If you can't handle this job, then you need to leave.
Yeah,
And um I mean, even out on the streets, it was that tough guy attitude. um and so we've got to be tough, and we got to, so there was nothing given to any mental health kind of stuff.
yeah.
Not even go take a break. It was okay, on to your next call, let's go.
Damn,
you know
that's pretty. I mean, I'm all for
it's
sucking it
tough.
up and being tough, but like I can't see myself watching somebody go like take that call and then being like, well,
Well, and being on the street, you're lucky you're on the being on the street because you can handle that one call at a time, and you can take that 15 minutes to an hour sometimes for each call. But when you're thinking of and you're just in that one call little bubble where as soon as we're done, we're picking up that next call and going and going and going. And if you're a one-man show, one dispatcher department, you can't just take five, say, okay, I'm done for right now, I need a breather,
yeah.
and go off. So
I think about that, Debbie,
yeah.
because I think about that a lot because where I work, it's a bunch of small towns in this county, and dispatch runs all of them. And there's like the other night we had like torrential downpours, so I'm just in the church parking lot reading a book. There's nothing to be done. It's just I'm waiting for a call or a tree to go down or whatever, but I'm listening to dispatch, who's not getting any kind of rest at all. They're just boom, 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 just constantly. And where I work too, it's like the dispatch center is so easily overwhelmed because it's one of the poorer counties in Massachusetts, and they do police and fire, and like there can be 20 cops on the board, all on one frequency, all different towns. So it very much like we run silent a lot. We'll just use our MDTs to do stops, and they'll check our status. Like, are you all set? Like they pay attention to that. But there are people who still call stops in. There are also fires that happen. There's also wildfires that happen there. So or a storm comes through, any one event beyond like a traffic stop shuts this dispatch down. Like we have a big storm come through and limbs down all over. You can't get through. Like we had a storm recently where I had like a gigantic tree blocking a main thoroughway in town with wires entangled, the whole thing. I'm just trying to tell them I'm here and I'm on this, and we need the power company, we need the highway department, we need people to come out and clear this. 45 minutes. I called 5 times. No one ever answered me.
Wow.
Now I'd like to believe if I yelled help or like something beyond just my call number, someone would be like, whoa, what's going on? But I don't know. Like, I really don't know. I called 5 times and no one ever answered me. I'm like, because during this giant storm where all these towns were affected, there was also a fire. So it was just like, bloop, just complete implosion. And I know they only have 2 or 3 dispatchers up there.
Wow.
And I'm not angry with them because I know they're doing all they can, but they can't do it. It's too much, It's insane. Yeah. So I don't know what the answer is. The answer is more money, like more money, more dispatchers, and coming from a place where all these towns don't have a lot of money, it just ain't going to happen. It just kind of is what it is. But yeah, I have sat there before and just listened to them nonstop dealing with stuff, and I'm like, oh, my jurisdiction's not going off, so good for me.
Yeah, it gets a little. It was funny, just kind of during the week up there to see which areas would be busy on what days, or
Yeah. Debbie, can you describe the strangest or most bizarre thing you dealt with at dispatch?
Well, let's see. I've had UFO calls. We actually had one. So we have what's called a NAWAS radio, and don't ask me what the nomenclature stands for, but it's like an emergency radio that starts nationwide and then goes to the states and then the counties and then the jurisdictions inside the counties, if possible. So we had that radio, and um, one of our counties down south of us, I think it was Bakersfield, kept came up on the radio and says, "We're looking at a UFO right now." Going, what the heck is going on? And then they were describing it, and I get on the radio and I go, "I'm sorry, dear, that's a star. That's okay. You're good."
This is another dispatcher saying that?
Yeah, I was at another agency. She was like looking out. It was the star Sirius, and on a really cold, clear night, it looks like a UFO. So,
That is funny. She said
um,
it over the air? My goodness.
yeah. So yeah, that was kind of funny.
Well, it is
And then I've
Bakersfield, so.
yeah, yeah. And then I've had a possible Bigfoot call, which was kind of interesting
Yes.
because our county up there went from kind of urban to very rural national forest.
Okay.
Went from Sacramento all the way to the Nevada state line. So we had a lot of the Sierra Nevadas, and so yeah, I've had a one call that was possibly Bigfoot. So that was kind of cool.
That is great. Did you, I mean, when someone calls and says that, are you like, you're like, okay, so what? Do you just say, why do you think that?
Well, I sent somebody out there. They said it was a prowler, but prowlers don't have 15-inch bare footprints in the snow. So yeah,
Did the cop find anything?
nah,
Ah,
nah.
still
But
aloof.
we sent them out there anyway. Um, yeah, that's we've had President. Who was that? Was it Bush? Yeah, President Bush visited our Fair County once.
Oh,
So we had a Secret Service detail that we helped out with. We've had King Hussein from Jordan came and did some rafting on our whitewater on the American River, which
my.
was kind of cool.
He gets around.
Yeah. So, little bitty things like that. We had a real famous kidnapping that we found her. JC Dugard was kidnapped out of our county and found 19 years later, and that was awesome. The original deputy that took the one of the reports was sheriff at the time
Oh,
when she
really?
was found. So yeah, that was kind of cool.
That is cool. Very cool. So, Debbie, can you tell us about your most intense or terrifying call that you dealt with?
That would be my officer involved shooting that resulted in my deputy's death. Back in October 23rd, 2019. Yeah. Hearing the gunshots, they were basically ambushed when they went out there. And I had uh, three of our deputies and a ride along that was a deputy applicant from another county.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
uh, the applicant was shot. My deputy was shot and killed, and the other two deputies were able to get everybody else out of there and maintain a perimeter until we were able to get more units out there.
Wow.
So it was tough.
Was it in a city?
No, so we went to a supposed prowler call on a marijuana grow in South County. So it was very rural. Um, and at the time, the cartels were coming in because of California's laws on growing. The cartels were coming in and contacting small growers to grow for them rather than having a big, huge grow of 10,000 plants. They'd go after these little guys, and this guy decided that he didn't want to give the cartel his plants, and so they came and tried to forcibly take them from him, and that's what we walked in on was that. So
Wow. That is sketchy. Um,
yeah.
so you got a call from, and at the time, was any of this legal? Or 2019, yeah, so it was a legal grow?
Um, yes and no. It was a legal grow as far as the owner of the property, how many plants there were, but he wasn't growing for himself. He was growing for the cartel.
Oh, so he kind of got himself into this problem then.
Yes, he got himself, and he was the caller on this. So he also got charged uh, partly with the murder.
Wow. What was the call? Like, did you get a call from the deputy who died?
So they were out there, and then all of a sudden, one of my deputies comes up and tries to talk to him, and there was nothing. And so he goes and gives the guy's call sign and says, "If you can hear us, click your mic," because he might have been in a spot where if he had made any noise, he could have been shot. So, that's what we were looking at. And we heard nothing. And then I went back over and said that again, and nothing. Um, then I heard a lot of gunfire, during this whole process. Anytime
Mm.
anybody keyed up, you could hear the gunfire. So, yeah, they finally were able to find him and get him out of there and get him on an ambulance. And, at that time you think, okay, he's on an ambulance, because I haven't heard a
Mm.
status yet, whether he's alive or dead. So he's on the ambulance. So that in the back of my mind, he's going to be okay. He's going to the hospital. And that's when when he got to the hospital, we found out he had passed.
Did you find out pretty quickly in dispatch? Did they let you know, or?
So what happened was at the hospital, somebody um, that was there that wasn't related to the department was hearing what was going on and posted on Facebook that the deputy had died.
Oh, wow.
So the patrol lieutenant who happened to be at the hospital um, called us to tell us so that we didn't find out from somebody else. And
Wow.
yeah,
Debbie.
so I was still dealing with everything going on after I found out he passed. So I'm trying to keep my calm, making sure everybody out there, because they hadn't captured the suspects yet. So I am trying to keep calm to make sure they get the suspects and they're not aware that he has passed, so that they can get their mission completed.
Yeah.
And, I lit up off the mic and I'm in tears.
Yeah, I bet.
It was awful.
So for you, I mean, obviously, clearly, very traumatic situation
Yeah.
that you went through. When did it? How long did it take for that to start to kind of rear its ugly head with you for trauma?
Not even a month. Not even a month. But I had been in therapy since 2016 for an unrelated issue. So I had some tools. I mean, it's that next day I called and made an appointment to go see an emergency therapist. And then that same day I had my therapy appointment, I went and saw a peer support person that I knew.
Mm.
So, I mean, I knew how to get myself help.
Yeah.
But I still had really bad symptoms. A lot of anger issues.
So you were mostly, was it anger, or were you gun shy at all to go to work, or?
Oh gosh. A lot of crying on the way to work, a lot of crying on the way home. I mean, yeah, it was just I was a mess. I
Yeah,
I literally hit rock bottom.
I bet. And I mean, this is the modern era of policing that this happened in. So where did they do a debriefing? Did your job offer you stuff like that as well?
So, yeah, we had a great peer support team, and we had all the bells and whistles for the few weeks after.
Okay.
With the debriefs, the if you need time, all of that kind of stuff. I even that night, um, before I left, I told our lieutenant, I said, "We're not coming in. Nobody's coming in tonight. This shift is not here." I said, I put my foot down. I wasn't even the supervisor on the shift. I said, no, we've got to start, taking care of this.
Yeah.
And he was in agreement. And so luckily we didn't come in that night. And um, after the night after our regular days off. So we were off for like 4 days after that, which was good.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah,
so,
that's
but
intense.
it's
And
been the long term. In the long term effects were bad, and there was no aftercare for the long term.
I got you. How long did you dispatch after this?
About a year.
Really? So that's
Um,
a long time.
um, yeah. I had a supervisor that was not trauma, what they're calling trauma informed. So she took me down the disciplinary route, which made everything worse.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm having anger issues, and she's getting butt hurt because I'm having anger issues. So she's writing me up.
Oh,
I don't know
man.
how else to describe it. So yeah, so she's doing that, and meanwhile my symptoms are getting worse and worse. Even though I'm in therapy and I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, it just wasn't working. And so another supervisor that was there was also going to school to be a therapist. So she took me under her wing, got me onto workman's comp, got me the help I needed. And then in October of 2020, my psychiatrist said, no, you're not, nope.
Yeah,
So,
you got to move on. I mean, you did a long time at dispatch. Did
yeah,
did the county or retirement board fight you at all, or were you able to go out?
yeah, yeah.
They always do. I mean,
So I was deemed permanently disabled in February of 2021 because I was on workman's comp this whole time, hoping that I could go back. But, you know, that's when you become institutionalized, and you don't know you can't see the bigger picture, and all you see is that job.
right.
Um, so they deemed me permanently disabled, and then HR started sounding weird on the phone. So that's when I got an attorney. Said, you know what? So he got a settlement for me, and I was able to retire. And I didn't retire on medical because I had the time in.
Okay.
So it was I would have gotten less money on a medical retirement than I would a regular retirement, and they approved me in 3 days on a regular retirement. So I was like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And when if you go out on a medical retirement, there's all kinds of restrictions on like, isn't there restrictions on like money you can make and all this other stuff?
Right. Yeah. So it's like, well, I'm on a regular retirement, so I have none of that,
That's
which is
great.
nice.
Yeah, absolutely. So now you're out of the game. What would you say to somebody? What was the biggest what was the biggest thing that impacted your recovery? Like what did you find the most helpful with kind of recovering from a trauma like that?
Um, Kind of staying away from anything law enforcement related. And I know that sounds really weird. Um, a lot of people find comfort in their friends and everything, but I was pretty much ignored by my department, by my former coworkers. Um, don't know why, but there was just no communication. Um, I also, um, I was one of those ones that watched Chicago PD, Chicago Fire,
Sure.
all the little Chicago stories, SVU, 911. All of those went off of my DVR. I didn't watch those again.
Yep.
I still find it a little difficult, especially 911 because they go into the dispatch center. Um, and I can't, I still get triggered by certain sounds and things like that. So all of those went, and kind of delved into just my hobbies: sewing, knitting. Um, I also do childcare for my autistic grandson. So and he's just a joy. I
That's
love him to
great.
death.
That's great. Well, you certainly did your time. So it's time to, kick
Yeah.
back and try to be a little bit more zen about life, right?
Yes, yes. I get outside just about every day, except for the last month. It's been over 100 degrees every day, so we stay inside. But our routine is I go pick him up in the morning and we go for a walk. We go to the park, we play a little bit, we come home, he takes a nap. I adult for a while,
Yeah. That's great,
do
Debbie.
bills, clean the house. Um, and yeah, just getting away from law enforcement was big a big thing, because it was my life for 27 years, 28 years.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes, that's a big thing everybody fights is letting it not take over who you are, your personality. Like that's,
Right, right,
here's Debbie. She's a 911 dispatcher. You know what I mean? It's exciting for people to tell other people that like she's a 911 dispatcher.
right.
Like, and then people are like, oh, now it's like your identity. It's like, oh, I do something important. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah, yeah.
to let go of
I'm
that
not
is kind of
just,
like, you know,
I'm not the wife, I'm not the mother, I'm not the grandma, I'm the dispatcher. And yeah, it was tough to get out of that mindset. And I think I've done pretty good about, I let it go for about 2 years, and then said, I've got to do something.
yeah,
So here I am
yeah,
doing the
absolutely.
podcast.
No, yeah, it's great and it benefits me, so I like it. But yeah, you've come on, you've been talking about it again, so I got to imagine that's kind of cathartic, right?
It's good. It's kind of like free therapy. Um, I just go on and tell my story, and every time it gets a little better and a little better, and I'm not um, anxious about it anymore.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. Debbie, looking back at your career, all the years you did, can you tell us about a heartwarming or positive story you have?
Oh my gosh. Um, there's a couple. And we had to go take some kids with CPS away from a home on a Christmas Eve.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
they went to the house, took the kids. There was no presents, there was no Christmas tree, there was nothing basically. So
Yeah.
our whole shift, dispatchers and deputies, got together, pulled some money, sent somebody shopping at Walmart because 24 hours.
Yeah.
they brought they bought toys and clothes, and then they brought them over to dispatch, and we wrapped it all, and then
I
they were
love it.
able to take all the presents over to the foster family so that the kids had something when they woke up.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So yeah. And there was a lady who called one time that her dog had passed, and she didn't have the funds to dispose of the pet, and we paid for the dog's burial for her. So there's things that we do. We are good people.
Yeah. I love that. I had Chris Luttrell on here and
Oh, I love Chris. He's
yeah,
fabulous.
good dude. And he was saying how his department was really, really ahead of the times where they actually had like a kind of like a Good Samaritan credit card.
Oh
So
wow.
the chief got this thing going where it was like you run into a mom and kids that can't afford their hotel or, stuff like that. Here's this card. It's charged with so much money from the association or I don't know who, I can't remember who was funding it,
Wow.
but that like it, cause I do know a lot of my father included, who have given their own money in these situations
Hmm.
because some situations are just too heartbreaking where you're like, I
Oh
don't
yeah,
care.
they
I'm
are.
gonna like. I remember my dad told me he caught a kid. He was stealing a winter jacket, and he bought the kid the winter jacket. You know, like
Oh yeah.
because he wasn't stealing like, cigarettes or
Yeah,
something.
when mom steals the formula because she has nothing to feed her kid, it's
Right.
stuff that tears at your heart. It's just
Yeah.
I don't mind paying for stuff like that.
No, not at all. So yeah, I thought that was really cool that they had that fund kind of to like, I mean, talk about awesome. You can be like, hey, you know what? The police department can pay for this. It's like, what? How cool is that?
Yeah.
That's a problem. No one ever hears, these won't make the front page of the newspaper.
No,
they're,
no,
they're
it won't.
only when
Unfortunately.
we screw up that will be on there.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah, I can remember yelling at the news when some dispatchers got arrested or because they were sleeping on the job. So that makes the news, and it's like, are you
right.
kidding me? And we're here doing all these other things, and you know, getting out in the community, and nobody pays any attention to that.
No, that's very blasé. Who cares about that? I know it. Debbie, so if you knew somebody, or a lot of people listen to the show are looking to get into law enforcement and possibly dispatching or some form of it, what kind of advice would you give to people that are looking into getting into this kind of like high stress field? Like, is there anything that you could glean from your 27 years that you would definitely want them to know?
Yes. Start your mental health journey the first day you sign up to be a cop, a firefighter, a dispatcher, corrections, whatever. Take that first year and find a therapist or counselor, whatever, that you mesh with, and go see them on a regular basis throughout your career. Because when the poop hits the fan, you're going to need somebody, and that's not the time to go look for somebody, is when you're in crisis.
Absolutely. Have it preloaded. Don't be in the panic. Yeah,
Learn your tools and use them, you know. And mental health tools, they're not just for you. You can help other people by using those tools. You have people that work CIT and that great mental health unit that they have down in San Antonio, um, where they go out and deal with the mental health calls and use those tools for those people. And so it's a benefit, actually.
Yeah, especially if you sit there and do it yourself, you experience it and see the benefits. You can definitely describe that a lot better to somebody who needs help.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. I love it. So what was it? Okay, there's one question on here that I don't ask all the time, but I've been asked to ask it more often because I ask the same questions all the time. People like them because they're boilerplate and they know what to expect. But what do you do obviously you're retired now, but what do you do to relax? What hobby do you have that you enjoy?
I knit, I sew. I love walking, going out and just being outside.
I do too.
Is amazing. But I recently just found something fun, geocaching and
Yes.
Munzie. So there are two apps that you can get on your phone, and you can do them on your walks, or go to a place and do a walk and do all this fun stuff. And it's great.
Yeah. No, Debbie, I have a good story about that. Last year, I'm sitting on one of the state roads that goes through where I work, and this guy comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, I don't know if this is a problem or not, but I just saw somebody stick." He's like, I walked up to it. He stuck a silver cylinder up under, where where a street sign attaches to the post.
Yeah.
He goes, "There's a cylinder," and he shoved it up there. and he was this older guy. He was kind of scraggly looking, and he took off. And it was suspicious. I don't know what he's doing. So I'm like, okay, you know how it is in our line of work. Like, you're gonna get weird. I'm like, okay, I'll go look. So I pull over, and as soon as I start walking towards the sign, I can see a little silver thing sticking out below the sign. And I'm like,
a microcache.
I'm like, what is that? And I don't know about any of this stuff. So I put on my rubber gloves, I'm like, I pull this cylinder out. I'm like, it's like a machined cylinder, like the cap on the bottom is like, very flush with the rest of it. I'm like, it looks like industrial grade. I'm like,
yes.
What the hell is this? So I bring it over to the hood of my cruiser. I like slowly, making sure no powders fall out of it. I'm slowly unscrewing it. I pull out a little plastic bag, and in the plastic bag is like a fortune cookie sized folded piece of paper, and I unfold it, and it unfolds into like a notepad, like a police notepad size piece of paper, and it has coordinates on it, and it has a description of different places, like New York City subway platform, then like upstate New York, and then like Western Mass, and then all the different descriptions of where this little thing has been. And I'm like, this is geocaching, because I'd heard of that. I'm like, this is a geocaching thing. So I put it all neatly back together. I screw it together, and I stick it back up in the sign. And I tell the guy, I think this is just like a game people play. I think it's a geocaching thing. And he's like, oh, I've heard of that. But the whole thing, it was so intense when I'm like pulling it apart. I'm like, what the? It was like, but at the same time, I could see why it was fun, because it was kind of fun doing it,
Oh yeah, it's quite interesting trying to not be obvious when you're pulling something out of the ground that's this big.
Yeah, and that cylinder sat in that sign for like 4 or 5 months, and then one day it was gone, because I would drive by it and I'd be like, still there, and then one day I drove by, I was like, oh, it's gone. I'm like, there was a little bit of sadness that came over me,
Yeah, it's like, oh darn.
Yeah, somebody got it.
So it's what I've started doing on the walks, and I take my grandson so that I can use the baby as an excuse why I'm looking in weird spots.
Yeah, he's got this baby. He's curious. He's all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't control him. Oh, awesome. Debbie, it was an honor to have you on the show. I really appreciate you coming on. Is there any place besides right above your head there is your Instagram is at D911green. Is there do you want me to add anything in the show notes for people to contact you, or?
Well, I have a link tree on my Instagram profile that'll take you to my TikTok, TikTok, X, and LinkedIn.
Perfect.
So
I will put all that there. Thank you so much for coming on. And can you hang out for like 3 or 4 minutes when I do the outro?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. Thank you. The great Debbie Green, ladies and gentlemen. Really fun having a dispatcher on, hearing her stories, and just hearing the reality of the trauma that they also suffer dealing with these, let's be frank, these crazy people out there that somebody's got to deal with in these crazy situations. This is the time in the show when I thank the Patreon sponsors. Who I'm talking about is the great Jamin Jack from Security 101. Check them out. The great and powerful Andy Biggs, recently upped to lieutenant. Thank you, sir. The great Tom Connell, lieutenant level. Thank you, sir. Adam McMahon. Adam Mihal, the great Ape Good. Ben Peters, ladies and gentlemen. Bentley Barnett. Brad Thompson. Dan Carlson from Burley Boys. Check him out on Instagram, everybody. Chris June. The great Clark LaCuff. Dave Ellman. Detective Nick Adams, ladies and gentlemen. Doug and Kelly Newman. Love you guys here at church. The great Dylan Mosher. Elliot Sykes, everybody. The great Gary Steiner. George Cariotis, ladies and gentlemen. None other than the great George Cariotis. Greg Gadboy, J.A. family. Thank you muchly. Jake Pinedo, James Rose, the great Jason Labrie, Jason Lau, ladies and gentlemen, Jessica King, the great John Jordan, John Shoemaker, Justin King, the great Kyle Roberts, none other than Kyle Napier, everybody, Lauren Stimson, ladies and gentlemen, the handsome Lane Campbell, Michael Roach from Roach Machine AI Solutions, check him out. Iceman Motocross Chronicles, check out his podcast. Nancy Hammond, the great Paul Maloney, Raymond Arsenault, everybody, love you, buddy, see you at church. Richard Tolles, keep on trucking, brother. Sasha McNabb, Scott Young, the great Sean Clifford, Seth Wright, Sheriff Ronald Long, everybody. The great Tammy Walsh, holding it down at dispatch. Tony Fahey, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long, thank you very much. Zach Haney, and the great Zachary Pleat. Guys, the list is getting long. My voice is getting hoarse, and I love it. Thank you so much for all the support. Once again, if you listen this far in the show, please know that the Patreon is the place to support. But if you can't, I understand. The show will remain free. I love you guys, and I'll see you next week.